Hey everybody, this is Alan with Meet the Thriller Author, and I'm excited to welcome the legendary Walter Mosley to the podcast. With a career spanning more than 60 books and unforgettable characters like Easy Rawlins and Joe King Oliver, Walter continues to redefine crime fiction. His latest, Been Wrong So Long, It Feels Like Right, is out right now. Really enjoyed it, Walter. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So when I said legendary, you kind of went, ugh. But I mean, how does that, when you hear people like me describe you that way, is it kind of like, how does that feel?
I don't know. It's fine. The thing. This is not a problem like with what people think about me or my kind of brand of people, but I think it's a problem when because the best thing about writing for me is writing. I love to be a writer. I love to make words work and put things together. And it doesn't matter if I'm writing a play or an introduction or a memorial or whatever, a novel. It's really good to be writing, and that's what I like the most. And so, you know, you don't do it to be you don't do it to be legendary. You do it to be to do something you love to do. Yeah.
And in this book, of course, it says so. This is sets up two intense personal investigations for Joe, including one tied to his own family and finding this missing woman. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? How you approach balancing these two storylines and about his estranged father? How does that
You
all
know,
put together?
it's again, it's so interesting, because there's the external thing. That's the book that's finished. Once the book's finished, it no longer belongs to me. It's out in the world. People read it. Everybody who reads it reads a slightly different book because the book is partly the words and then partly who they are. Right? They're bringing, words in and they're creating the world. They know what the characters look like and sound like, but I don't know what they know. Which is wonderful. It's great. And so how I went about writing it, I just started writing. One of the things that I love about the idea of a mystery is, well, how do you write a book that somebody else is reading? There's an end. It's going to happen, but they're not supposed to know. They read it thinking, I got to solve this mystery, and then the end comes, and it's always something somewhat different. A lot of people say, "Well, I was thinking that," but really they were thinking five different things, and that was one of the things. But and so when I'm writing, I don't know what the end is. I actually don't even know. I wrote that first chapter, with Marley Mann, and I thought that, well, maybe that's what this book is about. And then I start the next one, and Joe's back at his office. His daughter's there, and his grandmother, his 94-year-old grandmother, is there. And I think, wow, that's interesting. So that's what's happening. But then she starts saying, well, listen, I have a job for you. And I go, really? And it's like, oh, and then the job is about his father, and he has a very complex emotional relationship because he hadn't seen his father since he was 13. He has but a very complex emotional relationship with him. But now the grandmother says you have to find him. And he goes, okay, well, why? Is this because I'm dying? And so the story is growing, and I kind of know it because I wrote it down, but I have no idea where it's going. And that's really what the fun is about the writing. It's like you give yourself hints. I believe, and I don't think this is true for all writers, but I know it's true for me that a lot of what I write comes from like kind of unconscious motives. And so I'm writing and I go, okay, fine. This guy working out his relationship with his father, and to a great degree it is, but it's many other things. And I think if I tried to figure it all out beforehand and put it down in an outline, it would be a lot less complex and a lot less satisfying.
Because I remember that from last time. You usually don't ever outline, right? You kind of you're discovering.
But even when I do, I don't follow it. I put everything down and I say, one, this happens, two, that happens. But, I get down to six and all of a sudden I'm going in another direction, you know. Um, I think outlining helps people if you need to write faster,
Mhm.
but still, if letting all things being equal, I like to just start writing and see where I end up.
Yeah, you mentioned Joe's relationship with his father because that really did feel so raw and unresolved. And basically, he really, like you said before, the only reason he even went looking for him is because his grandma, he can't say no to his grandmother, basically.
Right.
So how does, I was kind of wondering, can you share that your thoughts then on how family and legacies have shaped Joe and the story?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, when you go all the way back to, not all the way, it's just like three books. You go back to the first book, and uh, Joe, who's not a perfect guy, makes a lot of mistakes, especially when it comes to, women. I mean, he's married and he has a daughter, but if, some girl gets up in front of him, he's gonna, run after her or run away from her because it really is kind of the same thing in the end. And um, but he was tricked uh into being with this woman so he could be blamed for an assault, which he didn't, which wasn't committed. And it was really a lot of fun, because you see who in the end cares about him and who doesn't. His wife doesn't care about him, but his young daughter does, and his grandmother does. Both of these are people in his life, and if everybody loves you and takes care of you, you might take it for granted. But if only a couple of people do, that becomes incredibly important. Those connections and even the idea of those connections becomes so strong. He's so deeply connected to his grandmother who came to visit him every day when he was in jail. His daughter who refuses to, she lives with her mother, in the beginning, but she refuses to, hate her father because her mother wants her to. She goes, look, dad made mistakes, you made mistakes. What do you want? And I think that is what really brings. You can talk about love when there's the internal conflicts, or as Aristotle would say, the dialectics of the drama.
Yeah, and it does get much more intense than being in prison for something that you didn't do. And some people believe you, like you said, but most people don't.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, understanding, I mean, America, which so enjoys having, millions of people, imprisoned, and not only imprisoned, but then after being imprisoned, you can't even get a job, I've known people who've been in for a long time, 20, 30 years, but they get out, and they got an electrician's degree, a plumber's degree, a house builder degree, but they can't get a job because they also have a felony, you know. And it's that you kind of go, wow, this is, and we I mean, America's a great place, but it's also a hard country. It's easy to go broke.
Yeah.
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 It's easy to go broke. A lot of people are realizing that right now, and you have to, I'm always writing about that aspect of culture, partially, because of my own background, but just partially because that's the way it is in America.
Yeah, especially the big cities like New York City, Los Angeles. I mean, those are so expensive to begin with for anybody. And when somebody come out of prison.
But at the same time, places like Wyoming, Mississippi, Alabama, you have like even Louisiana, which is a state I love, but you can really be poor in Louisiana. You know what I mean? And but you're living in the country. Still buying a sandwich is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, now, and then the other side of the coin in this novel is the California billionaire who hires Joe in the beginning. How did any of the current billionaires that we see in the news a lot, how did that shape into the story at all? Or can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, I love Roger Ferris. I mean, he owns all the silver in the ground in the world. He's the richest man in the world. I think in the second book, they figured it was like $800 billion strong. And for whatever reason, Roger's fallen in love with with Joe's grandmother. You know, he's the billionaire is 92, she's 94. Uh, and you know, she lives in a room in his house, or she has this her central room in the house, uh, uh, a place that's an exact copy of the cottage she lived in you know out in the woods in Tennessee. You know, and it's like you know, because I'm really I'm writing about a billionaire who's a hero. I mean, he's my hero. I don't know if somebody else's hero. He he wants to give his company back to his employees. Because of that, his children want him dead. You know, but it doesn't matter to him that the children want him dead. He's gonna give everything back. Uh, and I just kind of I love that, you know, because there are people, you know, in history, you know, Carnegie, who actually think things like that. That you know, you should be living a life in a country where everybody can make it. Everybody can make it. And so if I don't give my children, you know, $1 billion, whatever, it doesn't matter because they can get a job and you know pay their rent and have a good life. And I think that that's the way Ferris thinks. He's and I really like that. And also I like that, you know, because without that, you kind of put your character living in a place where he doesn't have as much intellectual purchase as he does with you know knowing everybody from the you know the corrupt police that you know that he likes, and his you know and people who are in trouble in the street. But on the other hand, there's somebody who says, oh, you need to get somebody out of prison and escape. Man, use my jet, I don't care. You know, it's fun.
Yeah, and then you, between Joe King Oliver and Easy Rawlins, so they're just kind of curious because they're two different kind of investigators, obviously. Um, what's your is your process the same when you're writing for Joe or you're writing an Easy Rollins novel, or how does one become the other when you get started with the idea of the story?
Well, you know, there are two different things I think in that. One, of course, Joe and Easy lives right now. I just finished a book about Easy called Gray Dawn. It's 1972. I'm also writing a book about Joe, another one, and it's 2025, right? And so those things alone are going to make them different kinds of books because it was a different America, it was a
Mhm.
different world. And so that's different. But once I have in my mind the character I'm writing and the time I'm writing them in, then the process is the same. I say, okay, uh, easy is gonna, you know, because we're all humans, and humans, you know, have pretty much the same kind of thing going on. You know, when they start thinking about, you know, getting hungry, getting horny, getting happy, all of that stuff is part of being a human being, and so I think I can put all the feelings anywhere. You know.
What about like the I don't know why this popped in my head, but I could just see you like, do you ever like are writing about Easy Rollins and then you accidentally have him on a cell phone and you go, oh, wait a second. Or
I don't do that exactly, but sometimes I'll be writing about Joe, and a guy says, hey, how you doing?" He says, "Easy." I go, "Oh no, I didn't mean that. No, that's not. It's not easy. It's Joe." I you know, but it's fun. I mean, it is fun. Yeah, and you can make mistakes, and that's the reason. Like when you're writing, you know, I was every once in a while I'll be at a some kind of public event and some young person, usually a guy, will ask, I'm writing a novel, Mr. Mosley, and the biggest problem I have is I don't know when it's finished. You know, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, you write it and then you reread it. You see what needs to be changed and you change it. And then you reread it and change it, reread and change. Go on like that. Keep on going. You might do it 20 times. You might do it 30 times. But at one point, you reread the book, you see the things that don't seem to be working, but you don't know how to fix it. That's when the novel is finished. You know, it's just you do it and do it and do it until anything you do does not make it better. Then that's you know when it goes out into the world, first to editors and readers and stuff, and then finally to the world in general.
Yeah, because there's a lot of writers, especially aspiring writers, kind of get stuck in there, they're like never finishing it, never finishing that novel.
Yeah, yeah. They just get stuck, because they're looking at perfection. I hold the universities responsible for that. Ever since the university has taken over the novelists, um, that they are the ones who are going to teach people how to write novels. They're the people who know the least about how to write a novel and how to do a novel. And you get into a class and somebody starts talking to you about Shakespeare and Dostoevsky, and you're saying, God, I'm just trying to write a story. I got to be Dostoevsky in order to write a story. What? I can't do that. You look at these people, you look at somebody like Melville or Gogol in Russia, or Dickens, you know, they didn't like they didn't go take a class, and on top of that, the university, the problem is they want to own it. They want to own literature. And you can't. It's a growing thing. It's an evolving thing, and you have to be able to allow that to grow, and so anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100% because that happened to me when I went to college. I I got scared, and then I didn't write for like 20 years because if you're already insecure, it starts messing with your head.
Well, yeah, and of course, the thing is you make yourself vulnerable to the university, and because they're in business to make money, they're not in the business to make writers. Like, you could come to a school that has, certain teachers and certain expectations, and you could see somebody's like a really wonderful writer. If you say, "Listen, this school is not for you. You should not be here." Nobody ever says that, because if you can pay for it, they're going to let you in.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's ridiculous. Uh, the students, no, writers are not students. We're not philosophers. We're not teachers. We're not students. We're trying to, our best to tell a story and to share that story. You know, Yeah, I was telling these people I was in Atlanta with a couple of writers, and there was a woman, a young woman, lovely young woman, and she was showing us around, and we walked past these three guys on a corner, and they were, talking and smoking cigarettes and drinking wine and having a good time on the corner. And the young woman walks past, and then we're walking past, and the guys just stop. And one of the guys looks at her and he goes, "Girl, you got to stop," which is wonderful because it was like a poem, right? Because said, either stop being so pretty or stop and talk to us, And she didn't do either thing, but and you go, yeah, those guys are going to tell a story that I'm going to be interested in. Just they're going to talk about their lives, and through their language and their histories, they're going to tell the story. And yeah, and somebody else is like, at a university. Anyway, I know I shouldn't be down on universities, but because I don't work for them, I don't have to worry about them. And I worry about people going into, spending $30,000 a year to get a degree where they can't even teach writing.
Yeah, yeah, get out with that big debt.
Yeah.
Uh, and another thing with these stories too, now, like the cities like seem to take up are big characters too. Like Los Angeles or New York City. How does that shape the stories that you tell?
Well, how you live shapes your life, right?
Mhm.
So every once in a while, I'll read about like the various Native Americans, you know, living in various tribes, on the West Coast, Northwest Coast, like, Oregon and Seattle, and I mean Washington. And one of the things that was really true about all of them is their staple protein was salmon. And one of the things is the whole village smelled of salmon because they were catching the salmon and processing it and smoking it and eating it and all of that. That your life is kind of formed around the place that you live and what that place is like. And it's not just the way it smelled, but it's also what kind of clothes that you make, what kind of relationships you have with each other, with the genders, with the ages, all of that stuff. And so whenever you're writing, you have to, it's not a general notion. It's a specific place that you're in. You know, you're in Los Angeles, you're in New York. I mean, I wrote one thing about a slave on a plantation in Georgia in 1840. Well, this kid is in a plantation in Georgia in 1840. And where you're living is like 90% of your life, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's why they shape the stories too, right? Because that's what we know. We're kind of like writing what you know, even if you versus writing for some place that's you don't understand or doesn't have anything to do with you. It'd be kind of hard, I would imagine.
Yeah, and writing what you know is very a really important thing. But what you know is a much larger thing than you think, because you understand how all of us understand how systems work. Well, because no matter where that person is, like let's say you're writing some science fiction story and it's on Mars or beyond, but you say, well, who's in charge? Well, in the future, people are not in charge. This happens and that happens, and it's I think that you can create a place because listen, if I read about Los Angeles, I'm creating Los Angeles. I give you an example. I was talking to a guy really 20, 25 years ago. I had it was doing a reading in LA and a guy uh that I'd say any questions, any reason, hey Mosley, let me you know that house you were talking about? The blue house on Dinker Street? And Mouse was in that house? And I go, yeah. He says, I was born in that house. Now, I made up the house, but that doesn't mean he wasn't born in that house. You know what I mean? I made it up, and he took what I made up and applied it to real experiences in his life. I mean, that's what's so interesting about the creative process in place and in character in fiction.
Yeah, I was watching your master class and that you did a couple of years back. And there was one that really got to me was a little note about it was you talked about genre and the rules of fiction, but how we
Mhm.
should be pushing our boundaries. So I was wondering about that because a reader has a certain expectations when they're reading crime fiction, for example. How do we balance that of pushing the boundaries but giving the reader what they're expected of what they want?
I mean, it's such a good question. And it's so hard to answer. You know, I'm writing fiction, and almost all fiction has some crime in it, has some mystery to it. If you know everything that's going to happen, like if I tell you in the first paragraph, well, in this thing, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to change, and that's going to be this, and then everybody's going to die. You're less likely to want to read it. You're like, well, okay, I know that story. Now let me try this other one over here. Um, you know, I, so my hope is that when I write a mystery for, anybody, for Easy or for Socrates Fortlow or for, Fearless Jones or Mouse or whoever, when I do that, I really hope that people are interested in it because I don't want this to be a job where, somebody comes up and tells me, well, listen, when you make the quarter pounder, the sauce has to be like this and this like, it's like, okay, fine, because I got to make the same thing every time. Some writers do that, and some readers want that.
Mhm.
But I I try my best to make it interesting to me, and I'm hoping that other people are gonna want to like it. And I think that that's a kind of a tenuous stance, but I think that in art that's what it has to be.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. And that's something I wanted to ask you too, because I always ask my guests, because I have aspiring writers that listen to this podcast, obviously.
Sure.
And you've mentored so many people, so many writers, and you've championed diverse voices. What kind of advice do you have for people who are like who are aspiring writers?
Well, again, everybody's different, and so some things work for some people. For instance, Georges Simenon wrote the Maigret series, 80 books, I think 80 of those things, those novellas, which I think are beautiful. And he would be like this. He'd be in his house, probably drinking a martini, some kind of party, and all of a sudden he'd go, "Oh, I feel a novel coming on." And he would go to the apartment above his garage and he would stay there and write until he was finished. It didn't take long, but maybe 4 days, maybe 5 days. He had people, who, worked servants who worked in the house, and they would bring him his food and, do that stuff. And that's wonderful. Most of us are not like that. The idea that I have about writing that works for me is that I write every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I write every day. I some days I don't have much time or I can't do a lot, but I do a little. I try to do at least 3 hours, which I think is for me a perfect amount of time. And I think the more that you write, when you write in the morning and you finish, and then over the next 21 hours, all these things are happening in the back of your mind, and they kind of come up into consciousness. And the next day, you have more to write about. You have more to say. You have prepared yourself to write more. And I think that is the best advice I can give. I don't think it'll work for all people, but I think it'll work for the most of us. And the more you write, the more you know, the deeper you get into your own creative juices, and something will come from that. I can't promise that the book you write will get published, or that people will like it, even if it does get published. I can't say that because I just don't know. But the thing you have to love is the process itself, and hope that what comes from that is what's best for you and your career as a writer.
That's awesome. And what do you use to write? I'm not curious now. Do you use Word, or do you use another tool, or?
Well, I work on my computer, and there are various ways that you can, come at language in your computer, but, Word is one of them. Sometimes I write by hand. I'm one of my first teachers at City College when I was going there, which only cost $1,000 a year, I want to say. When I was going there, Edna O'Brien was my, teacher. She ran a workshop that I would go to. And I just loved that. I thought she was, politically, artistically, socially, she was just wonderful. And Edna, what she used to do, she would write her novel longhand. When she finished writing the novel, she would give it to the typist, and the typist would type it up and then bring back to her what she'd written. Edna would read it and make notes on the typed thing and give it back to her. And it just went like that, back and forth and back and forth. I mean, that's a great way to write. It doesn't really matter. I always, somewhere in the middle, read the novel out loud. So I can, because one of the things that happens when you're going over it those 20, 30 times, you start to make assumptions about what you said, and you're not even right. You're not even really looking at what's there right now, because it's changed and changed and changed. But when you read it out loud, it's looking at it from a different point of view. And I think those different points of view are very important.
Yeah. All right, Walter. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us. Really enjoyed your new book.
Thank you.
Looking forward to, you said you have another Easy Rawlins and another Joe Oliver coming out. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and also I have one other book that I wrote along the way, called Galen, A Romance in Black, and I'm trying to in my own head reinvigorate the romance genre to be something a little bit different, but still about love, and that's a lot of fun too. Yeah.
Is that out now?
No, it's going to come out not this year, but next year.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, listen, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. Enjoyed talking to you.
Bye.
Bye now.